Hotel. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Matthew Daniels TV. And y'all see the title of this one. We're going to be continuing the series of Let the Ancestors Speak. Remember, we are letting the ancestors speak and we're letting them get it all out. Today, I got a real good one for y'all. A real good one. Interesting topic. We're going to be talking about hoodoo, the religion created on the plantation. Again, we're talking about hoodoo, the religion created on the plantation. Now, what exactly is hoodoo? What do I mean when I say hoodoo? A definition of it is hoodoo is a set of spiritual practices, traditions, and beliefs that were created by enslaved African Americans in the southern United States from various traditional African spiritualities and elements of indigenous botanical knowledge. Practitioners of hoodoo are called root workers, conjure doctors, conjure man or conjure woman, and root doctors. Regional synonyms for hoodoo include root work and conjure. Remember these words. Scholars define hoodoo as a folk religion. It is a syncretic religion between two or more cultural religions, in this case being African indigenous spirituality and Abrahamic religion. So, what are they talking about? Basically, when the transatlantic slave trade was taking place, what happened was they were bringing massive amounts of people from the African continent and enslaving them here in the Americas. Now, those individuals on the continent of Africa, yes, a majority of them on the continent of Africa had already learned about Christianity and they had already learned about Islam. But the vast majority of the ones that they were enslaving were neither Christians nor Muslims. All right, I want you to understand that. Now, yes, there were a small percentage of Muslims enslaved, a small percentage of individuals that had already been exposed to Christianity enslaved, but the vast majority of them held traditional African spiritualities and religious systems, primarily from the west coast of Africa and from Central Africa. So when they were brought over here to the Americas and enslaved on the various plantations, throughout the Caribbean islands, South America, and North America, what happened was the colonizers or the enslavers made the practice of their traditional religious systems and spiritual systems, they made it illegal. It was illegal to practice African religion, or it was illegal to practice African spirituality. So what the enslaved had to do, they had to practice their spiritual beliefs and practice their religion in ways that were inconspicuous, in ways that it would not be easily recognized. So what you would find is, although a lot of the enslaved on the plantations adopted by force, a lot of them adopted Christianity, lying just beneath the layer of Christianity that they presented to the world were African traditional spiritual systems. And the mixing between African spirituality or African religion and Christianity became what we know today as hoodoo. That's why the title of this is Hoodoo, the religion created on the plantation. Hoodoo is African spiritual beliefs that were held by the Africans that were brought over here enslaved and masked under the guise of Christianity. What you're going to understand is, what you need to understand is, back during those days, there were two types of churches. You had the white church and you had the black church, right? And actually, there was three types. You had the white church, you had the black church, and you had what they called the invisible church. Now, the invisible church was the enslaved would often gather without permission And unbeknownst to the slave owners and the colonizers, they would gather in the woods in the dead of night. They would sneak off, and they would in hiding directly practice their African spirituality and their African beliefs. Now, in the black church, they had a form of Christianity, but even in how they practiced Christianity, how they explained their Christianity, and how their Christianity played out, it was intimately tied into their African spirituality and their African traditions. And then you had the white church, where basically they would have two different types of services. The preacher would preach to the white citizens one way, and then the preacher would preach to the slaves another way. And what you're going to notice, if you listen to any of the ancestors speak, they always say the only sermon they heard was slaves obey your masters. And the slave that knows his master's will and does not do it, it deserves many stripes. Okay, and to be good and to obey their masters. That was the only type of sermon the enslaved heard. So you had the white church, the black church, and the invisible church. If you get some time, Google the invisible church. So that's why when you look into the definition of hoodoo again, it'll tell you that it is a syncretic religion between two or more cultural religions, in this case being African indigenous spirituality and Abrahamic religion, and is centered around what they call conjuring, right? What they call conjuring and dealing with spirits, and they dealt with amulets, and they dealt with spells, and they had direct ties to the spirit, to the spiritual world. They spoke to spirits, they invited spirits into their worship services. They utilized amulets, and they utilized potions, and they utilized magic in order to heal themselves, prevent themselves from becoming sick, and to seek revenge. You are hearing a lot of the stories where certain conjure men or conjure women, they would provide a service for the enslaved. They had certain um um they had certain rituals that they could perform, that they would perform for individuals that they claimed would prevent the slave master from whooping them or beating them, or would prevent the slave master from punishing them severely or selling them off to a more horrible plantation in the deep south. They even have stories of where individuals, before they would attempt to escape to get to freedom, they would go to the conjure man or the conjure woman, who would sometimes create powders. They would use graveyard dirt, and they would create powders, and they would put it on the feet of the enslaved who were about to run away. And this was meant to assist them in making it all the way to the north successfully, or to assist them into not being able to be tracked by the hounds that they would seek after the quote unquote runaway slaves. Even in a lot of the slave revolts, a lot of the slave revolts themselves were orchestrated by quote unquote black preachers or conjure men or conjure women. And in some of the slave revolts, they even would get graveyard dirt, and they would mix it with roots and various things that they found out in nature. They would make potions and powders, and they would put it on their bodies before they actually engaged in a slave revolt, to keep them safe and to help them become successful. And so a lot of the laws that made it illegal for the enslaved to practice traditional African spirituality was a direct result of those individuals, the conjure man and the conjure woman, who were hoodoo practitioners, using their spirituality and their religious beliefs to assist them in rebelling. And that's another reason why they didn't even want the enslaved to have churches, because in those churches they would talk about freedom and they would promote freedom. So a lot of this stuff was buried beneath the surface of Christianity. So a lot of times you would see the enslaved people, they on the surface, they were Christians. And yes, they believed in the Bible, they believed in Jesus, they believed in God, but their Christianity was not the Christianity that we have today. For one, the vast majority of them was not even allowed to read the full Bible. They only heard bits and pieces from what the enslaver told them. And the majority, the only sermon that they really heard, they tell you over and over and over again, the only sermon they got was slaves obey your masters. So how do you think they filled in the blanks of their spirituality or their religious practice? They filled it in with a mix of African spirituality and Christianity. And on the plantation, they formed this religion that we call Hoodoo. Okay, so what I want to do first, because again we're continuing this series of allowing the ancestors to speak. We're allowing the ancestors to speak for themselves because they have been spoken for far too long. So what I want to show you guys first is the enslaved were well aware that a lot of these practices that they had were coming directly from Africa. All right. So this is one of the slave narratives out of Texas. Okay. This is one of the slave narratives out of Texas. The ancestor says, there have been some queer things white folks can't understand. Their folkses can see the spirits, but I can't. So remember, there is a lot of spirituality involved in hoodoo, and there is a lot of dealing directly with the spirits. Now, think about it. The average Christian, if you tell the average Christian that you're talking to a spirit or a spirit is talking to you, that that's like paganism. That's bad. You shouldn't be dealing with any spirits. So this isn't traditional Christianity right here. So she says that there were plenty folks that could see the spirits, but I can't. My mammy learned me lots of doctrine, what she learned from old folks from Africa. And some, the Indians, learned her as well. So she learned some of this from the Indians, the Native Americans, but she learned a lot of doctrine directly from Africa. If you have rheumatism, just take white, and here she gives some of the examples of what the hoodoo practices actually looked like and consisted of on the slave plantation. This is some interesting stuff. She says, if you have rheumatism, just take white sassafras root and boil it and drink the tea. You makes liniment by boiling mullein flowers and poke roots and alum and salt. Put red pepper in your shoes and keep the chills off, or string briars round the neck. Make red or black snake root tea to cure fever and malaria, but get the roots in the spring when the sap am high. Now, a big portion of hoodoo is what they would kind of call today as magic. Okay, they couldn't go to the store and buy aspirin and Tylenol and ibuprofen, Dayquil and NyQuil. So what they would have to do in order to heal themselves or prevent themselves from becoming sick, they would have to go out into nature and utilize what was found in nature to actually heal their bodies. But some of their methods, because these methods aren't the traditional medicinal practices that we know of today, people call it magic, they call it witchcraft, they call it conjuring, they call it whatever they want to call it, but is actually hoodoo. The name of it that has been coined for these religious practices is hoodoo. Now pay attention. You see, she mentions if you have rheumatism, just take white sassafras root. And then she says that you can boil mullein flowers and poke roots and alum and salt to make liniment. I imagine that's some type of medicine, some type of medicinal thing. Now, though the them talking about roots is important because remember, Practitioners of hoodoo are called root workers, conjure doctors, conjure man, or conjure woman. Now, there is nothing in Christianity. Think about what I'm telling you. There is nothing in Christianity that teaches you that you can use roots and plants and flowers and snake root, and you can tie things around your neck in order to heal yourself. Basically, they'll just tell you that you need to pray. You need to pray. But anytime that you see the ancestors talking about working with roots, working with plants to either heal themselves or protect themselves or to get revenge on somebody or to get good luck or to ward off bad luck, these are religious practices, spiritual practices that they brought from Africa over here with them. Okay, just like she just said, a lot of the doctrine that her mother learned was directly from the old folks that came from Africa. They brought those West African and Central African traditions, they brought it to the plantations. Look what she goes on to say. When children are teething, put rattlesnake rattles round the neck, and alligator teeth am good too. With African spirituality, it was all about utilizing not only the access to the spirit world, but utilizing nature around you, the things that could be found, animals, plants, roots, things in nature is what individuals implemented in their spiritual practices. So yes, today we'll hear somebody talking about, oh, if your child is teething, put rattlesnake rattles around their neck or alligator teeth around their neck. It sounds weird. It sounds funny to us, but these were just some of the practices, right? These were just some of these hoodoo practices that they actually got from Africa. Okay, look, she says, show the new moon money and you will have money all month. Some superstitious ideas that they held. Throw her 5 kisses and show her money and make 5 wishes and you'll get them, right? Look, she says, when anybody get cut, I always burn woolen rags and smoke the wound, or burns a piece of fat pine and drops tar from it on the scorched wool and bind it on the wound. For headaches, put a horseradish poultice on the head or wear a nutmeg on a string around your neck. Remember that they keep talking about wearing things around your neck. That's going to be real important as we move forward. Look, she says, if you kills the first snake you sees in spring, your enemies ain't gonna get the best of you that year. For a sprain, get the dirt dauber's nest and put the clay with vinegar and bind round the sprain. The dime on the string round my ankle keeps cramps out my leg, and tea from red coon root good too. All these doctrine things come clear from Africa, and they always work for Mammy and for me too. So think about it. How did these people enslaved on these plantations, how did they know this stuff? How did they develop these practices? Where did they get it from? It did not come from traditional religion here in America. Okay, it just didn't. And they didn't just wake up one day and just make all of this stuff up on their own. These are ideas and these are concepts that they brought directly from Africa with them, and they just, since it's different plants, it's different roots, it's different trees, it's different animals in the Americas than in Africa, so they had to utilize what they had here in America. But the concepts is things that they got directly from Africa, and they had to utilize these things in an inconspicuous way because they were not allowed to practice their traditions no more. So while they're talking about using these things for healing and whatnot, some of this stuff was actually outlawed. It was actually outlawed. Now remember, hold on. Remember some of the stuff that you just had. right? We're about to look into some specific West and Central African belief systems. Now, the picture that you're seeing on the left of the screen, that's something called the Minkisi, right? That's from the Congo or Central Africa. And that particular item or artifact is housed in the World Museum in Liverpool. Now, listen to this. Minkisi cloth bundles were found on slave plantations in the United States in the Deep South. Minsky bundles influenced the creation of mojo bags in hoodoo. Now, remembering that one you just heard, she was talking about tying things around the neck, like mojo bags, right? Mojo bags. She says right here, put red pepper in your shoes and keep the chills off, or string briars round the neck, right? Things around the neck. When children teething, put rattlesnake rattles round the neck, and alligator teeth them good too. Where are they getting these concepts of amulets and charms from? It's directly from Africa. And they even have something called the Minkisi, that's from the Congo in Central Africa, that was found on slave plantations, showing a direct archaeological proof that they brought these ideas over here with them, and they continued to practice their African traditional religions on the plantation. And they did a lot of it under the guise of Christianity. Look what it says. In West Central Africa, Bakongo and Yoruba people created medicine bags using leather or cloth and placed feathers, animal parts, roots, herbs, and other ingredients for protection. Remember, the ancestor she just kept talking about boiling roots. They talked about when the children are teething, use rattlesnake rattles, or you can use alligator teeth, right? You can string these things around the neck. In West, this was happening on the plantation. Why? Because in West Central Africa, the Bakongo and the Yoruba people created medicine bags using leather or cloth and placed feathers, animal parts, roots, herbs, and other ingredients for protection. These things are traditional African spirituality carried over on the slave plantations. When Yoruba or Bakongo people were enslaved in the United States, the practice of using feathers, animal parts, animal and human bones, and other ingredients to create mojo bags continued in African American communities and the tradition of hoodoo. In West Central Africa, people wear Nkisi, Wanga, and other charm bags to ward from and reverse evil and to cure illness. In West Africa, these conjure bags are called juju. The word juju is used in the African diaspora to describe all forms of charms made in hoodoo, African diaspora religions, and African traditional religions. These African ideals about charm bags influenced the creation of mojo bags and the spiritual philosophical practice in African American communities. Mojo bags can be hung from trees, tied to a string, worn underneath the clothes to cause an effect on the target. Okay, and as we move forward, I'm going to show you how they employ these ideas into their version of Christianity on the plantation. And if you think about it, some of these things, and we're going to get into it, some of these things we even carry on in the African American communities to this day, but a lot of us don't know where it came from or how it was actually preserved on the plantations, or why it was preserved on the plantation. So just in carrying on with the theme of allowing the ancestors to speak, we're doing a whole series allowing the ancestors to speak. I'm going to show you how they also boiled roots. It wasn't just for medicinal purposes. Okay, I don't want you to get confused. It was also for using it for protection, and it was using it for like revenge. It wasn't all good conjuring. It was not all good conjuring. Sometimes the conjuring was to bring death on an individual, right? Look, this ancestor says, I done forgot most of what they made us take. I know they made us wear asafoetida sacks round our necks and eat gum goo wax. They rubbed our heads with camphor, what was mixed with whiskey. Old folks used to conjure folks when they got mad at them. They went in the woods and got certain kinds of roots and boiled them with spider webs and give them the tea to drink. So you got the roots, you got the roots, you got the spider webs, and you got them boiling it into a tea to give to somebody to conjure an individual when they got mad at them. One of the interesting things that I noticed is some of these spells, they were used to make people fall in love with an individual. They were used to ward off evil. They were used to help an individual come across money. They were used to help an individual in a slave revolt. They were used to help an individual when they was trying to escape to freedom. It was so many different ways in which they utilize this particular form of spirituality. And you're going to see these same concepts coming up over and over and over again. So you know it when you see it. When she's talking about the sacks around the neck, she's talking about things like this. It's just brought over, like I say, brought over into the Americas. Now I want y'all to check this out. Now this is real interesting, right? This is real interesting because we have here a man who was born in slavery named William Adams. Now, this guy was actually a believer in the occult, and he was a spiritualist. And hold on just a second. We got a comment. I like to respond to the comments. Good morning, King Ampu, the real bookworm. Thank you. Have a great Wednesday. Hey, you have a great Wednesday as well. Thank you for tapping in. Thank you for all the continued support. And yeah, no doubt. You know, we're gonna allow the ancestors to speak. They have a lot to say, and we want to hear them describe what life was like for them on their own. All too often, we let other people speak for our ancestors and tell us what our ancestors thought and what they believed. But we have an unprecedented opportunity to find out what they had to say on their own behalf. So we're going to continue running this series of letting the ancestors speak. And now we're going to find out what they had to say about their religious beliefs, the religious beliefs that they brought from Africa and implemented here on the plantation. Now, this guy is a very, very interesting guy. He was an admitted occultist, and he was one of the spiritualists that they talk about. And so I'm going to read to you some of the stuff that he said, and now we're about to get into specifically how they mixed African spirituality with Christianity. You're gonna see how he quotes the Bible in order to validate the hoodoo, the African spirituality. And it's some of the most interesting things I ever read on the topic. And he goes in. Look, he says, you want to know and talk about the power the people tells you I has? Well, sit down here, right there in that chair before we start. I get some ice water and then we can discuss the subject. I want to explain it clearly so you can understand. So it was various people in the neighborhood that knew he was a spiritualist. He believed in the occult. He practiced hoodoo. He was a conjure man, right? And so when the federal worker came around to interview ex-slaves, a lot of people pointed them in his direction. So he says, I was born a slave 93 years ago. So of course I remembers the war period. Like all the other slaves, I had no chance for education. 3 months and the total time I spent going to school. I teached myself to read and write. I anxious to learn to read so I could study and find out about many things. That I has done. There's a lot of folks and educated ones too, what says we believes in superstition. Well, it's because they don't understand. Remember, the Lord in some of his ways can be mysterious. The Bible says so. There are some things the Lord wants all folks to know, some things just the chosen few to know, and some things no one should know. Now, just because you don't know about some of the Lord's laws, it ain't superstition if other persons understands and believes in such. Gloria Law, bro. This is very interesting. Love it. Oh man, thank you for tapping in. Hey, and I'm so glad you said that. A little transparency. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I call myself the real bookworm. I do that for a reason. I'm always reading. I'm always studying. I'm always learning. I'm something like a nerd, right? I'm always got my nose in the book. And sometimes the things that are just so interesting to me in my mind, I think, nobody else would even care about this, because you look out into the world and people's minds seems to be on anything other than learning, right? Anything other than learning. So to see anybody, it could just be one or two people, man, that are interested in the stuff that I'm interested in. Hey, it really makes my day. So I appreciate that comment. The Black Wolf, we live again. That root work is for real. That's why the elders kept Gordons in the backyard. Hotel Black Wolf. Exactly, bro. That's what I'm saying. There is aspects of this that we even carry on to this day, and we may not be aware of exactly what it is we're doing or where we got it from. You get what I'm saying? People now some people they are very astute. They know, but some people don't. That's why I decided to do this series of allowing the ancestors to speak. But look, remember, I told you guys in the beginning that with Hoodoo, they mixed African spirituality with their Christianity. That's how they was able to practice it, right? So watch how this guy speaks. He says, there's a lot of folks and educated ones who say that the people that's believing in the hoodoo, that's practicing hoodoo, is it's all a superstition. None of it makes any sense. So he attempts to explain it and validate it using the Bible, which is what they did. So the first thing he says, remember, the Lord says, and some of his ways can be mysterious. We all should be familiar with those types of verses. My ways are higher than your ways. My thoughts are higher than your thoughts. The Lord works in mysterious ways, right? We say that a lot. The Lord works in mysterious ways. So he's saying, okay, once you admit that the Lord works in mysterious ways, you don't tell me just because you don't understand what I'm doing that I'm not doing the Lord's work in some shape or form. It's just mysterious unto you. He said that there are some things that the Lord allows folks to know, all people. It's some things that he allows only a chosen few to know. And there are some things that no one should know. And he kind of right on point, because even in the Bible, when it's talking about Jesus said there was some things that even he didn't know, like when he was coming back. Hey, it's gonna be a thief in the night. Nobody knows the answer but the Father, right? So he say, now just because you don't know by some of the Lord's laws, it ain't superstition if some other person understands and believes as such. He goes on to say, there is some born to sing, some born to preach, and some born to know the signs. Now, he's going to get into some specific Bible verses, but he's touching on the subject right there when he's saying that some is born to sing, some is born to preach, and some is born to know the signs. Anybody that's familiar with the Bible on even the basic level, you know how in the New Testament they say that there are some people who are called to preach. They're called to be ministers. It's some people that has the gift of prophecy. It's some people that have the gift of speaking in tongues. It's some people that have the gift of charity. There are different things that the Spirit gives to different people. This is what he is explaining. He is explaining his beliefs to them using Christianity and the Bible. So he's saying that, hey, there's some people meant to sing, there's some people meant to preach, and there's some people that's just meant to understand these signs. Now, just because you don't understand these signs don't mean I don't. Just like if you can sing and I can't sing, that don't mean you weren't born to sing. So he says, there is some born under the power of the devil. Now, who know this verse? There are some vessels made to honor and some vessels made to dishonor. Watch him work. He is the epitome, one of the epitome, in my opinion, of what we're calling hoodoo, African spirituality mixed with Christianity, right? There are some born under the power of the devil. There are some vessels made to honor and some vessels made to dishonor. Look what he's saying. So the ones that's born under the devil, and they have the power to put injury and misery on people. And some born under the power of the Lord for to do good and overcome the evil power. Now, that produces two forces like fire and water. The evil forces starts the fire, and I has the water force to put the fire out. He's talking about how the Bible may describe like spiritual warfare. There are spirits and entities and you know in high places on another realm. There are evil forces working in this world, and there are good forces working in this world. He goes on to say, how I learned such, because the interviewer is asking him, how did you learn this stuff that you know? He says, well, I's done learned it. What I done learned it, it come to me, right? When the Lord gives such power to a person, it just comes to him. It am 40 years ago now when I first fully realized that I has the power. However, I was always interested in the working of the signs. When I was a little pickaninny, my mammy and other folks used to talk about the signs. I hear them talk about what happens to folks because a spell was put on them. The old folks in them days knows more about the signs that the Lord uses to reveal his laws than is folks of today. It am also true of the colored folks in Africa, they native land. Some of the folks laugh at their beliefs and says it am a superstition, but it am knowing how the Lord reveals his laws. He goes on to say, now, let me tell you something I seen. What I'm seeing can't be doubted. So he's going to give you a first-hand account. Now, whether you believe it or not, that's on you. But this series is all about allowing the ancestors to speak. We want them to tell us their stories. We don't want other people to tell their stories to us. Let's hear it from the horse's mouth. He says, it happens when I was a young man and before I realized that I was one that am chosen for to show the power. A mule had cut his leg so bad that him am bleeding to death and they couldn't stop it. An old colored man lives near there that they turns to. He comes over and passes his hand over the cut. Before long, the bleeding stopped, and that's the power of the Lord working through that nigga. That's all it am. Now, stop, pause, hold on. Yes, there's a million and one different things we can say to say that this story is not true. But for a second, let's not attack what the ancestor has to say. Let's just analyze it so we can understand the thought process. Okay. So first of all, if you have a mule that cut his leg so bad that he's bleeding to death and they can't stop him, and there's an old colored man that lives nearby that they turn to, why? Ask yourself the question. Critical thinking. Why would they turn to that old colored man about this what was it, a mule that's bleeding to death? Apparently they knew this guy for being a conjurer. They knew him for practicing hoodoo. They felt like he could do something about the situation. That's the only reason why they would go to him. So apparently he had to be a spiritualist and he had to be someone who practiced hoodoo. So they go to him. He passes his hand over the cut, and before long, the bleeding stopped. And he says, and that's the power of the Lord working. Now, mind you, an individual will tell you that um if let's say you're a Christian and you in Christianity you have the right amount of faith, you can heal. You can pray over the sick and you can heal them. I've had individuals, even my own brother. My brother is a pastor, right? My own brother has told me at the church that he's a part of. He told me out his own mouth. Now we're not here to disprove anybody. We're just talking. He told me out his own mouth that they was praying for an individual who was blind, and that individual went from being blind or going blind to where he could actually see. And you hear a lot of times people talk about being able to heal and this, that, and the third. So that's why he's calling it the power of the Lord working. This individual, this old colored man, being able to heal. Right? He goes on to say, I knows about a woman that had lost her mind. The doctors say it was caused from a tumor in the head. They took an x-ray picture, but there's no tumor. They gives up and says it's a peculiar case. That woman was took to one with the power of the good spirit, and he say it's a peculiar case for them that don't understand. This am a case of the evil spell. So there's a woman that has lost her mind. They take her to the doctor. They say that it's a tumor in her head, right? And the doctors give up and say it's a peculiar case. They can't do nothing for her. But then they take them to a hoodoo worker, and he says that, oh, it's a peculiar case for them because they just don't understand. It's a case of, this am a case of the evil spell, basically saying that it was like an evil spirit or an evil presence, a demonic presence on her that had caused her to lose her mind. Right? Maybe something aching to like demon possession, something aching to that. That's what made her cause her lose her mind. So he says 2 days after they take her to the conjure man, the hoodoo worker, the woman have her mind back. There's lots of those kinds of cases the ordinary person never hear about. You hear of these cases the doctors can't understand, nor would they respond to treatment. That am because of the evil spell that am on the persons. So the belief that these individuals have was that some illnesses and some sicknesses were caused by evil spirits, and they could not be healed by medicine alone. They had to be healed through spiritual practices, prayer, etc. Remember in the Bible, and I'm showing you how this stuff is related. Remember in the Bible, there was a guy who came to Jesus that was possessed in the devil. Or he didn't come to Jesus. Jesus came across him, but he was possessed with a devil, right? And the story talks about no one else could heal him. So, maybe I may be getting the story mixed up, but there was an individual that was possessed. Nobody else could heal him. Jesus came and he healed him, and he cast out the demons. And the other individuals was like, how were you able to do that? And we couldn't do it. And Jesus said that there are some spirits that can only be cast out with fasting and prayer. Basically saying that it takes a special type of way to address a particular evil spirit, to get that evil spirit off of a person. You can't do the same thing the same way every single time and get the exact same results. Okay, this is basically the concept that he's talking to them about. But people would say that it's not real, which you have every right to say you don't believe it. You have every right to say it's not real. That's not what I'm not here to argue for or against. I'm just here to let the ancestors speak. Now watch this. He's finna go further into detail where it emphatically proves that they're mixing the Bible with African spirituality, and the Christianity that they had on the plantation is not the Christianity that you might think it is. He says, About special persons being chosen for to show the power, read, use Bible. Again, about special persons being chosen for to show the power, read your Bible. Now, this person is admittedly in the occult. He's admittedly practicing hoodoo, right? He's going to explain how these concepts can be alluded to in the Bible, but this isn't the regular practice of Christianity. He says, and I find it amazing, right? Real quick, I find it amazing that he's actually able to quote the quote the Bible like this. That's wild, man. Because he taught himself how to read and write, and then he started quoting the Bible to explain his African spirituality, his form of hoodoo that was created on the plantation. That is amazing to me. Look, he says, it says in the book of Mark. So he going to the Gospels, y'all. It says in the book of Mark, 3rd chapter. He's off the dome. He's telling you where it's at. And he ordained 12 that they should be with him, that he might send them forth to preach and to have the power to heal the sick and to cast out devils. Now, mind you, before I got to this point, I was interpreting the stuff that he said earlier, telling you that he was really validating this with the Bible. Now you see him blatantly doing it. He say, look, in the book of Mark, the 3rd chapter, it tell you that Jesus ordained 12 people, the 12 disciples, that they should be with him, that he might send them forth to preach and to have the power to heal the sick and to cast out devils. So basically he's saying, okay, so you shouldn't even argue. He's saying, so you shouldn't even argue with me about the man that healed the mule, because this type of stuff is in the Bible, right? Christianity mixed with African spirituality. You're looking at hoodoo, ladies and gentlemen. He says, if it wasn't no evil in people, why does the Lord say, cast out such? Right? Now, we got to admit, in the Bible, it does talk about casting out demons out of people. It does talk about that. So he's saying, when he's telling you these stories about the woman that had lost her mind and she went to the doctors and the doctor said that they couldn't do nothing for her, but then they went to the conjure man or they went to the practitioner of hoodoo, and he said, oh, it's because they don't understand. This is an evil spirit on her. This is not a regular illness. Right? And he worked his craft to cast out the demon. He's saying, if stuff like that ain't real, if evil can't be on a person, why does it say in that Bible to cast out evil out of people? Right? And then you have so many movies where you have a Catholic priest going around performing exorcisms. And you have Jesus in the literal Bible performing all kinds of exorcisms. So what the hoodoo man is saying is, okay, well, if you want to say that everything I'm saying is superstition and is made up and that evil spirits can't get on a person, then if my belief ain't true, yours not neither, because it says this stuff in the book. You just don't understand what you're reading. So you're seeing, again, Christianity mixed with African spirituality. We got hoodoo, ladies and gentlemen. And look, he goes to the good book again. I mean, he throwing that Bible at this, whoever this interviewer is. And in the 5th chapter of James, the man telling you what chapter, man. And in the 5th chapter of James, it further say, if any am sick, let him call the elders. Let them pray over him. The prayers of faith shall save him. There it is again. Faith, that am what counts. Okay. He goes on to say, when I tells that, I seen many persons giving up to die, and then a man with the power comes and saves such person, then it's not for people to say it's a superstition to believe in the power. Don't forget, the agents of the devil have the power of evil. They can put misery of every kind on people. They can make trouble with the work and with the business, with the family and with the health. So folks must be on the watch all the time. So another aspect of African spirituality that was transferred over to the African plantation and used to create hoodoo was, it wasn't all about good. right? You had a lot of conjure men and a lot of conjure women who used it for revenge. There were stories about a slave would be done bad, or individual colored person would be done bad. So they would go to the conjure man to cast a spell on an individual to make them have bad luck, or to bring death upon them, or to bring death into their family. They would even go to the conjure man or the conjure woman to bring death and bad luck on the slave master. Or if an overseer was extremely heavy handed with them, they would use their spiritual practices. They would go to the conjure man, pay the conjure man to create a potion, go get the right roots, go get the right animal bones, put them inside of a pouch, make this concoction, and then that was meant to bring harm to the overseer or to whoever it was that they had a problem with. And if an individual was conjured in a negative way, they would go to the hoodoo man or hoodoo woman or conjure man or conjure woman, and they would use them to basically like break the spell. They would get amulets that will protect them from the evil power that has been used against them. Brooklyn Zoo, hotel, fam. Good to see you in the building. What's good? What's good, broski? What's good, man? I hope everything going well with you. I hope everything going well with you. All right. So they would also conjure to make people businesses fail or to make people businesses do good. Okay. And like I say, it's just something is something similar to like blessings and curses that an individual might put on somebody. Look, he says, folks have business trouble because the evil power have control of them. They has the evil power cast out and saved the business. Now he's finna give us some more examples. He says, there was a man in Waco that come to see me about that. He say to me, everything he tried to do in the last 6 months turned out wrong. It starts with him losing his pocketbook with $50 in it. He buys a carload of hay and it catch on fire and he lost all of it. He spends, hold on. He spends $200 advertising the 3-day sale and it began to rain. So he lost money. It showed the evil power. So this individual had a series of unfortunate events happen to him and happen to his business. So after several things happen, he becomes convinced that there is like evil power or evil presence on his business. He's believing that maybe he has been conjured. So he goes to the individual that is making this slave narrative right here. And so he says, well, he say, that am the way it go. So I comes to you. This is what they would do when they had these types of problems. They would go to the practitioner of the hoodoo. I says to him, it's the evil power that have you control, and weans shall cause it to be cast out. It's done, and he has no more trouble. So he performs whatever kind of ritual he has to perform to save this man's business. He performs it, and the man's business is saved. He goes on to say, you wants to know if persons with the power for good can be successful in casting out devils in all cases? Well, I answers that. Yes and no. They can in every case if the affected person have the faith. If the party not have enough faith, then it am a failure. So he's saying, they ask him, okay, you saying you got this power. Does this power work all the time? Can you always cast out these devils? Can you always cast out these evil spirits? Will it always work? And he says, yes, it will always work if the affected person has faith. But if the affected person does not have enough faith, it is not going to work. What does that sound like? What does that sound like? When you go into the Bible again, doesn't it talk about, hold on. Isn't there stories where people came to Jesus wanting to be healed or wanted somebody in their family to be healed? And because they themselves had enough faith in who he was and his ability to do it, they receive the healing, or their family member received the healing. uh, Christianity, African spirituality mixed to create what we call hoodoo. But people will they're going to hear it. They're hearing it described as hoodoo, and they're not really understanding. They're not really understanding. So this guy gives a very good breakdown about it. So he says, in order for these powers to work, the individual has to have enough faith, right? With the faith of a mustard seed, you can move a mountain. Isn't that what Christianity teaches and believes? You have to have faith. An individual cannot be healed unless they have enough faith themselves. Exactly. He goes on to say, wearing the coin for protection against the evil power. That am simple. Lots of folks wear such, and they uses mixtures that am sprinkled in the house and such. That am a question of faith. If they has true faith in such, it works. Otherwise, it won't. So now he's talking about the amulets and things that people will wear. Now, listen, in Africa, in West Africa, I showed you guys earlier, they would make these pouches. They would make these pouches that they would make these pouches, specifically in the Congo. Let's look at these miskies. Now, these things were bundles with either like parts of animals, roots, or herbs, or other things in it for protection and for healing, and as charms or to reverse evil and to cure illness. These what these bags were used for. Okay, and so what the ancestor is saying is, yes, you can wear these things for protection. Okay, you can wear these things for protection, but these things in and of themselves won't protect you, won't heal you, won't reverse the evil, won't cure the illness. It is ultimately the faith of the individual who is wearing the thing that causes the for lack of a better term, the magic to work. He's saying it's all dependent on the faith of the individual. But these items are employed, right? These items are employed. It's, some people, it's like a good luck charm. It's like an individual running around with a 4-leaf clover. Or I remember, I don't see them too much now, but growing up, I used to always see people with a rabbit's foot. They got a lucky rabbit's foot, or a lucky necklace, a lucky bracelet, a lucky coin. These types of concepts and ideas, that believing that having a particular item on their person will change their physical reality around them. Praying with your actual prayer beads and moving through the prayer beads as you actually make your prayer, will it will have a physical effect in the real world, right? To actually making the prayer be answered, or become successful. This is the concept. This is the concept. So he's talking about, which they got from Africa again, wearing coins and such, and mixtures and things put inside of cloths to protect the individual. He goes on to say, some folks won't think for a minute of going without lodestone or the salt and pepper mixture in the little sack tied round their neck. Some wears the silver coin tied round their neck. All such and for to keep away the effect of the evil power. When one have the faith in such, and they accidentally lose the charm, they show am miserable. So again, he's talking about mixtures of herbs and roots and animal parts placed inside of sacks and worn around the neck or worn on the body. That comes directly from Africa right there. When they're talking about doing that, that came directly from Africa. It's a practice in West and Central Africa as part of their spirituality. He says, an old darky that has faith in lodestone for the charm told me the experience he has in Atlanta once. He carrying the hold, and the first thing he does is drop some brick on his foot. The next thing his foot slipped and him starts up a ladder, and him and the bricks drop to the ground. It am lucky for him it wasn't far, just a sprained ankle, and the boss sent him home for the day. He am excited and gets on the streetcar, and when the conductor called for the fare, Rufus reaches for his money. Hold on. Reaches for his money, but he lost it or forgets it at home. The conductor say he let him pay next time and make and asks where he lives. Rufus tells him, and he say, "Why, nigger, you is on the wrong car." That caused Rufus to walk further with the lame foot that he had started walking in the first place. He thinks there must be something wrong with his charm, and he looks for it, and it's gone. Sure enough, it am lost. He thinks, here I sits all day, and I won't make another move till I gets the lodestone. When the children come from school, I sends them to the drugstore for some of the stone and gets fixed. So this guy has a series of unfortunate events. He was known for carrying around a lodestone for protection. Now, believe it or not, he loses the lodestone, but he's not aware of losing the lodestone. Various bad things happen to him, and so finally he's like, man, all this bad stuff is happening to me, man, but I got my lodestone on me. He looked for his lodestone and it's gone. So he attributes the bad stuff to him actually losing the lodestone. But that's the same concept of, people wanting to carry a 4-leaf clover or a lucky rabbit's foot or a lucky charm or bracelet, something that they feel like will change their luck. So he goes on to talk about more bad luck and good luck. I'm gonna skip that. Yeah, basically they talk about it's being unlucky to have a black cat cross your path. So that black cat crossing your path thing, that has gone on for a extremely long time, right? Going on for an extremely long time. So let's move on to another one of the slave narratives. Now this one is interesting. They're going to be talking about a spirit visiting a woman, giving her secret writings, and saying that she was taught to read by the Lord. She never got any type of formal training on how to read, but she says that the Lord taught her how to read. And she is constantly visited by some spirit that gives her some secret things to write, that she's writing in a language that really no one can decipher, but she can understand it when she's in contact with this spirit. Now, this is very, very interesting because throughout history, there have been so many men and women who have claimed to come in contact with spirits that have given them secret things to write. I was debating with one of my good friends earlier in this chat group that we got, and we just so happened to be debating about Islam. And he was talking about how the Prophet Muhammad claims to have went up into a mountain and spoke to the angel Gabriel, and the angel Gabriel revealed to him the Quran. And even in the Bible, once again, it talks about the individuals writing the Bible being inspired by some higher power. But I want to show you guys something. Again, in Africa, a big part of their spiritual traditions was dealing with the spirits and dealing directly with the spiritual realm. Okay, and so in Hoodoo, dealing with spirits is very important as well. And so what we're going to see here is an account of someone who says that they were directly contacted multiple times by a spirit. And how it's written, it appears that the interviewer actually saw the writings, the secret writings that were given to this woman by the spirit. So the writings are real. Now we can debate on where she says she got the writing from, but we're not here to debate it right now. We're here to just allow the ancestors to speak. So first I want to start here because look, she says, talking about her grandfather, She says, my father's father was a very black, little, full-blooded African Negro who could speak only broken English. So her grandfather came directly from Africa. Now, we can assume, and we just have to assume at this point, that her father came from Africa with certain types of beliefs that he possibly passed down to her mother or father, her father, and then her father passed some of these things down to her. And this is how she knows about the things that she knows. But you're gonna see her describing this encounter with the spirit, which is obviously not a Christian encounter, but she explains it within Christian terms. Again, I want to keep driving this home that hoodoo is a mixture between Christianity and African spirituality. And hoodoo is the religion that was created on the plantation. Okay, so first I wanted to show y'all that she's not too far removed from a direct connection to Africa. Her father's father, which is her grandfather, was directly from, he was a full-blooded African Negro, wasn't mixed with anything else, and he could only speak in broken English because, of course, that was not his first language. Let's get down to the good part. Okay, so she says, Mary Gladdy, may the ancestor live forever, may her name live on forever, and may her memory never die. Mary Gladdy claims to have never attended school or been privately taught in her life, right? Which is not too hard to believe, because most of the individuals that were enslaved never went to school and they never received any type of formal teaching or training. It was against the law, really, for them to read. So she says, and she can't write or even form the letters of the alphabet, but she gave her interviewer a very convincing demonstration of her ability to read. When asked how she mastered the art of reading, she replied, the Lord revealed it to me. So here we have somebody that's born enslaved. She can't read. I'm sorry, but she can read. She can't write, right? And she cannot even form the letters of the alphabet. She can't write words, and she can't even write A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But she gave the interviewer a very convincing demonstration of her ability to read. So she can't write, she can't draw the characters of the alphabet, but apparently she told the interviewer that she could read, and the Lord revealed it to her how to read. And so the interviewer shows her something and said, okay, demonstrate your ability to read. What does this say? And the lady was able to read it. Gave the interviewer a very convincing demonstration. So the interviewer was convinced that, hey, I'm 100% sure she knows how to read because she told me exactly what this says. And so when she was asked how she mastered the art of reading, she replied, the Lord revealed it to me. Take it for what it's worth. That was her answer. So the ancestor goes on to say, for more than 30 years, the Lord has been revealing his work and many other things to Mary Gladdy. For more than 20 years, she has been experiencing visitations of the Spirit. Wait a minute. Hold on. Pump the brakes. Stop. For over 20 years, she has been being visited by a spirit, right? And what stood out to me is, like I said, I was just debating with my friend about Islam earlier. And as the story goes, over a 23-year period, the Prophet Muhammad was getting revelations from an angel or a spirit that he called Gabriel that was revealing the Quran to him. Imagine that. So look, she says, these do not occur with any degree of regularity, but they do always occur in the dead hours of the night after she has retired, and impel her to rise and write in an unknown hand. And that impel is probably compel. I don't think y'all heard me. For over 20 years, She has been experiencing visitations of the spirit. These do not occur with any degree of regularity, but they do always occur in the dead hours of the night after she has retired, and compel her to rise and write in an unknown hand. Now, she can't write. She can't write. She can't even make the characters of the alphabet. But she's saying for the past 20 years, off and on, some spirit has been coming to her in the middle of the night after she's about to lay down and go to bed, coming to her and telling her to rise up out of her bed and write in something in a language or a script that she don't even understand. These strange writings of hers now cover 8 pages of letter paper and bear a marked resemblance to crude shorthand notes. So the interviewer actually saw 8 pages worth of writing. Now, the interviewer doesn't identify what this language is, but she saw it. Whatever this woman is saying, the spirit led her to write. The interviewer saw it. So the writing exists. Now we can debate where she got the writing from. She says offhand, she can cipher or interpret or translate about half of these strange writings. The other half, however, she can make neither heads nor tails of, except when the spirit is upon her. So when the spirit is not there, she can interpret or translate about what half of the writings mean. The other half, she can only interpret it when the spirit is there. She only understands it when the spirit is upon her. When the spirit eases off, she again becomes totally ignorant of the significance of that mysterious half of her spirit-directed writings. Now, I really wish the interviewer would have made copies of what that writing was, so we could, look at it today and possibly try to understand what it is. That would be amazing. But unfortunately, we don't have that. She says Aunt Mary appears to be very well posted on a number of subjects. She is unusually familiar with the Bible and quotes scripture freely and correctly. She also uses beautiful language, totally void of slang and Negro jargon, big words and labored expressions. She is a Seventh-day Adventist, is not a psychic, but is a rather mysterious personage. She lives alone and ekes out a living by taking in washing. She is of the opinion that we are now living in the last days, that as she interprets the signs, the end of time is drawing close. Her conversion to Christianity was the result of a hair-raising experience with a ghost about 40 years ago, and she has never, from that day to this, fallen from grace for as long as a minute. So we have a direct reference to she's a Christian, she's a Seventh-day Adventist, but she's practicing this hoodoo because she is dealing with some spirit who is giving her some spirit directed sacred writings to write. Okay. Now, as you know, oh man, look, let's go here before we get up out of here. Another part of hoodoo, then this is also if you look for it, you can also see it in Christianity as well, is the idea or concept or notion of spirit possession, right? Spirit possession. So look, she says, or he says, I can't remember exactly if this was a man or a woman, but does I believe in the ghosties? I sure does. And now the ghost is spirit, and they're gonna make this plain shortly. Does I believe in the ghosties? I sure does, and I tells you why I know there am ghosties, spirits. First, I hears and see them, and lots of other folks I talks to has. Then my pappy and mammy both could see them, and they had special powers, but they was good powers. They has no use for the evil spells, all such. Remember the hoodoo worker William Adam that I showed you guys earlier. He explained that there were good powers and there were bad powers. And when she's talking about the ghosts, she's talking about spirits. So there was a lot of people who claim to have these powers to be able to see and interact with spirits. They were able to interact directly with the spirit world. This is part of that their spiritual traditions that came directly from Africa. Look, they say in the old days before surrender, and that's before the end of the Civil War, before the Confederacy surrendered to the Union armies. In the old days before surrender, the colored folks talk about ghosts and haunts. But since education and for the colored folks, or came for the colored folks, some of them learns to say spirit instead of ghost. So they started calling them spirits instead of ghosts. Now, I don't know if this is because they felt like these spirits or these ghosts were deceased ancestors, right? Or if they were like angelic type beings. But obviously these were beings who were not in flesh. She says now they has the church that say the preacher can bring the ghost or the spirit, but they cause it the spirit to the meeting and talk with them. That am the spiritualism church. Now, remember, I told you have the white church, you got the black church, and you got the hidden church or the invisible church. You had the white church where they preach to the white people. You had the black church where they preach slaves obey your masters. And then you had the invisible church or the hidden church where they straight up practice African spirituality in the woods. And if they would have got caught, and they would have been punished severely. So she's talking about in this spiritualist church, which is the invisible church, they had a preacher who they said could call the spirits to the meeting and talk with them. So they had meetings, and these weren't held in buildings, mind you. So let me paint the picture. We're talking about the enslaved people in the middle of the night, sneaking away from the plantation, going off into the woods where they cannot be seen or heard. And you got the preacher or the leader of this group calling spirits. The spirits come to the meeting with the people and talk with them. Imagine that. Imagine that. Direct interaction with these spirits. Now, we don't know if they're calling good spirits. We don't know if they're calling bad spirits. We don't really know if they're calling spirits at all. But hey, this series is all about letting the ancestors speak, allowing the ancestors to speak. And this is what they have to tell you. Right? She says, I tells you the things I hears my mammy and pappy tell me, and some I seen for myself. What I seen, I can be the witness for, and what my mammy and pappy says, I can be the witness for that, because I was not going to lie about what the dead people says. There am only one way to beat the ghost or the spirits, and it am called the Lord, and he will banish them. So this is again highlighting how hoodoo is a mix between Christianity and African spirituality. And African spirituality, they dealt directly with a lot of the spirits. But she says the only way to get rid of the spirits or to beat the spirits or to beat the ghosts, the bad ones, is to call on the name of the Lord. Now, obviously in Africa, they weren't quote unquote beaten or banishing spirits by calling on the Lord, aka Jesus, because they didn't know about him, right? They had to have been using some other form or some other method to do it. But she's saying that in order to best the ghost or to beat the spirit, you had to call on the Lord, showing again that this is some type of a mix between Christianity and African spirituality, right? So let's go back. So again, what is hoodoo? Hoodoo is a set of spiritual practices, traditions, and beliefs that were created by enslaved African Americans in the southern United States from various traditional African spiritualities and elements of indigenous botanical knowledge. Practitioners of hoodoo are called root workers, conjure doctors, conjure man or conjure woman, and root doctors. Regional synonyms for hoodoo include root work and conjure. Scholars define hoodoo as a folk religion. It is a syncretic religion between two or more cultural religions, in this case being African indigenous spirituality and Abrahamic religion. So hoodoo, the religion created on the plantation, the ancestors speak. So now that you guys know what hoodoo is, you know how hoodoo was created, you even have a good understanding of what hoodoo looked like on the actual plantations and on the ground. It involved magic spells, it involved charms, it involved amulets, it involved a interaction with the spirit realm. You had good spirits, you had bad spirits, you had some people who had the power to see these spirits, you had some people who had the power or the ability to call these spirits down into those meetings. You had some people who were possessed by evil spirits, and individuals could cast those evil spirits out of them. You had some people that used this to get revenge on the overseer or get revenge on the slave master, and you had some people who used hoodoo to help them in their actual revolts in the slave rebellions, and they led a lot of the rebellions. And even some people, when they were trying to get free, when they talk about the Underground Railroad and you hear about people trying to escape to freedom, sometimes they went to the conjure man or the hoodoo worker, and they would put things, powders on their body or on their feet that was supposed to help them get free. So I hope you guys heard something that you never heard before. I hope this gave you a better understanding of the topic of what hoodoo actually is and what it actually looked like and how it was practiced in real time. I thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for tuning in. Again, we're just gonna be doing this series where we letting the ancestors speak, and we're gonna be talking about a lot of different topics, and we're going to be getting the ancestors' perspective on these various topics. So once again, thanks for watching Matthew Daniels TV. I'm your brother Matthew Daniels, aka the real bookworm. I'm not just a bookworm world, I am the real bookworm. Make sure you get it right. I'm doing the book game like it ain't never been done before, and I'm doing the book game like it'll probably never be done again. And as always, may your name live on forever, and may your memory, family, never die. Let's make intelligence great again. I'm out.